So I want you to just imagine for a second that you have been rowing this heavy wooden boat for like 9 straight hours.
Oh man, just 9 hours of straight rowing.
Right. And it's in the pitch black. The wind is just absolutely screaming around you.
Yeah, that visceral reality is so important to grasp right out of the gate.
Exactly. I mean, the waves are just crashing over the sides. They're filling the hull with this freezing water way faster than you can even bail it out.
It's a complete nightmare scenario.
It really is. Your back is seizing up. Your hands are, they're covered in open, bleeding blisters just from gripping those heavy oars for so long.
You're at that point of just sheer delirious physical exhaustion.
Yeah, you are experiencing the kind of physical torture where you are convinced, without a shadow of a doubt, that you are about to drown.
Right.
But here's the absolute craziest part of this entire scenario. The man you left everything to follow, your rabbi, your leader, he is the one who purposefully forced you into this boat to begin with.
Yeah, that is a profoundly unsettling image to start with. But, it is literally the only way to accurately frame the reality of this event.
I mean, if we sanitize that terror, we lose the entire weight of the theology underneath it, right?
We do, yeah. Because we inherently want ancient texts to give us these simple, actionable takeaways.
Oh, for sure. Like a neat little formula.
Exactly. You face a hard time, you learn a lesson about courage, and then you just move on.
Like a motivational poster or something.
Right, but when you step into the historical reality of first century Palestine, that neat little formula just completely shatters.
It really does. Well, welcome to Reformed Thinking. Today, we are taking a deep dive into an event that has, quite frankly, suffered heavily from that exact kind of sanitization.
It really has.
We are exploring a narrative you've probably heard in Sunday school. I mean, perhaps you've even seen it, like, painted on a felt board or printed on a coffee mug.
The whole Jesus calms the storm motif.
Exactly. But we are looking for something much more substantial today, because if you are listening to this, as the learner, you aren't here for surface-level inspirational bumper stickers about how Jesus calms the storms of life.
Right, you're looking for the structural truths.
Yes, deep structural truths about reality, about theology, and honestly, about the darkest corners of human nature.
And our sources for today's discussion provide exactly that level of depth.
They really do.
I mean, we are working through two incredibly rigorous exegetical analyses of a single, just staggering biblical narrative.
Mark chapter 6.
Yeah, Mark 6, verses 47 through 52. This is the historical account of Jesus walking on the Sea of Galilee.
So our mission today with this deep dive is to unpack the massive collision that happens on those dark waters.
It really is a collision.
It is. It's a collision between absolute human weakness, incomprehensible divine sovereignty, and a terrifying level of spiritual blindness.
We are moving way beyond the cliches today.
Way beyond. We want to reveal a profound reality about who Christ actually is. So let's just jump right into the center of the chaos here.
Sounds good.
Because to truly grasp the magnitude of the miracle, we first have to, ground ourselves in the sheer physical desperation of that moment.
Yeah, we have to move from the conceptual to the visceral reality of a first-century maritime squall.
Exactly. And that visceral reality, it really starts with the geography, right?
It does. It starts with the geography of the Sea of Galilee, or, historical texts sometimes refer to it as the Lake of Gennesaret.
Okay, right.
And this isn't just a typical serene lake. It is a massive freshwater basin situated roughly 700 feet below sea level.
Wow, 700 feet below sea level.
Yeah. So when you picture this, you have to imagine this deep basin surrounded on almost all sides by incredibly steep mountainous terrain.
So it's basically a giant bowl.
Exactly, a massive geographic bowl. You have the formidable Golan Heights rising up to the east and the massive peaks of Mount Hermon to the north.
So we aren't talking about gently rolling hills here.
Not at all.
We are talking about a massive bowl essentially plunging deep into the earth.
And that topography, that is the key to absolutely everything that goes wrong for the disciples that night.
Because of the weather patterns.
Right. That specific bowl shape creates a unique meteorological trap.
A trap. That's a great word for it.
Yeah, because you have these very cold, dense air masses that gather on those surrounding snow-capped mountains.
Okay, I'm picturing that.
And without any warning, that cold air can just sweep down the mountainsides. It gets funneled through these narrow, steep ravines.
Also picks up a ton of speed.
Incredible speed, and then it collides violently with the warm, humid air that constantly rests right over the surface of the lake, because it's trapped by the basin.
Man, so it essentially turns the lake into a high-pressure wind tunnel.
It's a boiling cauldron, really. I mean, in a matter of minutes, literally minutes, a completely tranquil, glass-like body of water can transform into a raging, life-threatening tempest.
Just like that.
Just like that. The waves can reach extraordinary heights very quickly because the wind is bouncing off the surrounding walls of the basin and churning the water in every direction.
So it's not like the ocean where the waves are just predictably rolling in one direction.
No, not at all. It's not just a wave pushing you forward. It's a chaotic, multi-directional churning.
Which brings us to the men actually in the boat. And I think this is a crucial point. If this were a group of, landlocked tax collectors or Pharisees, we might brush off their panic as just inexperience.
Right, like they just don't know what they're doing on a boat.
Exactly. But the sources highlight who is actually gripping these oars. You have Peter, Andrew, James, John.
These are not weekend recreational boaters.
No, these are hardened, calloused, lifelong Galilean fishermen.
They have spent their entire lives reading this exact body of water.
They know it better than anyone.
Yeah, they know every current, every shift in the breeze, every little cloud formation over Mount Hermon. They know how to ride out a storm.
Which makes their current state of distress incredibly telling. I mean, I was thinking about it like this. If a seasoned airline pilot starts screaming during turbulence, you know it isn't just a bumpy ride, right?
It's a perfect analogy, yeah.
This isn't the panic of novices. This is the sheer terror of skilled professionals who are facing meteorological forces that have completely overwhelmed human technique.
And the original text actually notes their specific location to really emphasize their helplessness here.
Oh, right. What does the Greek say?
The Greek phrase is omeschitos thalasses, which means they are in the midst of the sea.
So they aren't hugging the shoreline.
No, they are trapped right in the dead center of the lake, miles from any shoreline.
Wow.
There is no swimming to safety. There is no beaching the boat on a sandbar to wait it out. They're fully, completely exposed.
And then there's the timeline of this whole ordeal, which is just staggering when you stop to actually do the math.
It really is.
The sources draw our attention to the specific timekeeping system Mark uses in the text. He mentions that this is happening during, quote, the fourth watch of the night.
Yeah, that detail is absolutely crucial. Mark is using the Roman military system of timekeeping here.
Which his original Roman audience would have understood perfectly.
Exactly. The night was divided into 4 equal 3-hour watches.
Okay, break that down for us.
So the first watch began at sunset, which is roughly 6:00 p.m. The second watch went from 9:00 p.m. to midnight. The third from midnight to 3:00 a.m. And that fourth watch, the one mentioned here, ran from 3:00 a.m. to 6:00 a.m.
But the narrative tells us that Jesus sent them out onto the water and they started rowing back in the evening.
Right before the sun went down.
So if we are now in the fourth watch, anywhere between 3:00 and 6:00 a.m., these guys have been battling this violent headwind for somewhere between 9 and 12 hours.
Just try to fathom the physiological toll of that.
I can't even imagine.
12 hours of maximum exertion. Your muscles are burning through all their glycogen stores.
Lactic acid is just paralyzing your arms.
You are dehydrated, you're freezing, you're soaking wet, and you're operating in the pitch black.
They have been entirely stripped of their self-sufficiency at this point.
They're running on absolute zero, surrounded by roaring, deadly chaos.
Okay, this is where I have to pause and push back on something.
Yeah.
Because this is the detail in the source material that really stopped me in my tracks.
Oh, which part?
It's the catalyst for this entire nightmare. The text explicitly says that back on the shore, before the sun went down, Jesus made or compelled them to get into that boat.
Ah, yes. The Greek word anakasin.
Yeah. The language implies force. He forced them to launch out. Wait, if Jesus is divine and knows all things, he knowingly forced them into a 12-hour maritime nightmare.
That is exactly what the text says.
How in the world does that square with his role as a compassionate caretaker? I mean, from a human perspective, sending your friends into a hurricane feels like abandonment or even cruelty.
It does feel contradictory to us, but that's because our modern sensibilities are heavily influenced by a fundamentally flawed theology.
Okay, unpack that. How so?
We have internalized what is essentially a prosperity gospel mindset, even if we don't really realize it.
Oh, I see what you mean.
There is this pervasive underlying assumption that if you are in the center of God's will, your life will naturally be characterized by ease, favorable circumstances, and just a distinct lack of friction.
Right. The idea that if I just follow the rules and listen to Jesus, my path will be smooth.
Exactly. We equate obedience with safety.
And if I hit a massive storm, I must have taken a wrong turn somewhere. I must be out of God's will.
But this specific text completely dismantles that assumption. Think about the book of Jonah for a second.
Okay, Jonah and the whale.
Right. Jonah experiences a violent, life-threatening storm at sea because he is in direct rebellion against God.
He is running away from his calling.
Exactly. But the disciples in Mark 6 are experiencing a violent, life-threatening storm at sea precisely because they are in strict, unwavering obedience to Christ.
Wow, that is a stark contrast.
Jesus deliberately constrained them to enter the boat and row toward Bethsaida. Their hardship did not arise from rebellion. It arose from submission.
That is a terrifying thought, honestly.
It is.
The idea that obedience doesn't insulate you from suffering. In fact, obedience might be the very vehicle that drives you directly into the center of the storm.
It forces a total redefinition of how we view our struggles. The contrary winds, the physical affliction, the 12 hours of agonizing labor. None of that means you have stepped outside of God's will.
The sovereign Christ sent them into the teeth of that wind, knowing exactly what awaited them in the fourth watch of the night.
Yes.
Okay, so if he knowingly sent them into this meat grinder, the immediate question any reasonable person would ask is, where is Jesus while his friends are suffering?
A very natural question.
Because we know he isn't in the boat with them this time. This isn't like the earlier storm narrative in Mark chapter 4 where he is physically present, asleep on a cushion in the stern of the boat.
No, the spatial dynamics here are entirely different. In Mark 6, Jesus is physically isolated from them.
Where did he go?
After compelling them to leave in the boat, he dismisses the massive crowd from the feeding of the 5,000, and he goes up onto the mountain alone to pray.
So Mark is painting this really stark, dramatic contrast.
He really is. Down below, you have the disciples plunging up and down in the dark, chaotic violence of the sea.
Right.
And up above, you have Jesus alone, elevated, standing on the solid, quiet, immovable land.
But then the text drops this incredible detail. It says that from the mountain, Jesus saw them making headway painfully.
Yes.
And the sources dive into the original language here to describe their struggle, and it is an incredibly intense word.
It is a staggering choice of vocabulary. The word Mark uses is psanazomenes.
Psanazomenes. What does that literally mean?
Well, originally it described the process of testing precious metals, like gold or silver.
Oh, testing them for purity.
Yeah. In the ancient world, they would take a touchstone and violently scrape the metal against it to prove its purity.
Wow.
Over time, that word evolved in the culture to describe severe physical distress, judicial interrogation, and even torture.
So the disciples aren't just inconvenienced. They aren't just tired.
No.
They are being tested on the touchstone. They are being physically and psychologically tormented by this opposing wind.
But the focus of that sentence isn't just their torment. It is the fact that Jesus saw them in the midst of it.
Which is mind-blowing when you think about it.
We have to think about the physical realities of a scene again. This is happening in the dead of night.
Right. The fourth watch. Pitch black.
During a severe tempest, the sky is choked with thick black storm clouds. There is no moonlight. There is no starlight.
And Jesus is miles away on a mountain peak.
Exactly. From a purely naturalistic standpoint, human eyes cannot see a small, dark wooden boat tossing on black waves miles away in the middle of a hurricane.
It's a physical impossibility. So Mark isn't just saying Jesus had, like, really good 20/20 vision.
Far from it. Mark is recording a deliberate, undeniable display of divine omniscience.
He is establishing that the limitations of human biology just do not apply to Christ.
Exactly. Distance does not limit his knowledge. The pitch-black darkness cannot conceal the plight of his people.
That is so comforting, actually.
The raging, chaotic waves do not interrupt his providential oversight for even a fraction of a second. While he is engaging in deep, solitary prayer on the mountain, his divine eye is completely, unblinkingly fixed upon his distressed followers.
You know, I was trying to wrap my head around how to visualize this kind of omniscience today.
What did you come up with?
The closest analogy I could think of is the modern experience of using a GPS tracker on your smartphone.
Oh.
Imagine you have a spouse or a child driving across the country, and they hit a massive, blinding blizzard in the middle of the night on some isolated stretch of highway.
Right, a whiteout.
Yeah. And you are hundreds of miles away, sitting in your living room. You aren't in the car with them. You can't reach out and hold the steering wheel to keep them on the road.
You're physically completely separated.
Exactly. But because of that GPS connection, you see their exact coordinates on your glowing screen. You know their speed, you know when they are stalled, you know their exact geographic reality, even when they feel completely lost in the storm.
That's a great way to put it.
Jesus' omniscience in this passage is like the ultimate spiritual telemetry.
Yeah.
He is tracking every single agonizing stroke of their oars in the dark.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it because it highlights the active nature of his knowing.
Right, he's not just passively watching.
Exactly. His observation isn't a passive, detached, hoping for the best. It is an active, intimately involved monitoring of their exact state of affliction. And this has massive theological implications for how we understand his current role.
Okay, how so? Break that down.
It connects directly to his ongoing eternal role as our high priest.
High priest.
Yeah. Just as Jesus retreated to the mountain to pray while his disciples battled the chaos of the sea, the New Testament teaches that he now resides in the heavenly sanctuary.
And what is he doing there?
He is making continuous, unbroken intercession for his church. This is the doctrine of providence in vivid narrative color.
That God upholds and directs everything.
Yes, he upholds, directs, disposes, and governs all creatures and actions. The disciples couldn't see him through the storm, but he saw them perfectly. Unseen does not mean absent.
That tension is so palpable. They feel abandoned, but they are actually under total surveillance.
Completely.
But he doesn't just stay on the mountain watching the GPS tracker, does he?
He does not.
He doesn't just intercede from a distance. He actually comes to them. But the way he chooses to rescue them, it just shatters absolutely every naturalistic explanation or rationalization we could ever try to impose on this text.
It really does. I mean, he doesn't hail a passing merchant ship to go pick them up.
Right.
He doesn't wait on the shoreline for the wind to die down so they can eventually row to him.
No.
The text tells us plainly that he comes to them walking on the sea.
And we need to be incredibly precise about what that means because, again, familiarity breeds contempt.
We hear it so often it loses its shock value.
Exactly. We've heard Jesus walked on water so many times it barely registers. But he isn't strolling in the shallow surf on the beach.
No, the Greek phrase is peripachin epitos telesis.
And he isn't skimming across a calm, glassy, frozen surface like an ice skater either.
The grammar of the text indicates a sustained, continuous action over a violently unstable surface.
Yeah.
He is treading upon raging, liquid billows.
With stepping in mountains of water.
He is stepping onto cresting 15-foot swells and walking down into the troughs as if those shifting molecules of water were a pavement of solid granite.
Whoa!
He is completely subjugating the physical elements of the earth beneath his feet.
Which brings us to arguably the most confusing, head-scratching phrase in this entire narrative.
I know exactly which one you're going to bring up.
I remember reading this years ago and just feeling completely baffled by his behavior. Mark writes that as Jesus is walking on the water, he meant to pass by them.
Yes, aphilen perothin audus. It is a notoriously difficult phrase for modern readers to digest.
It sounds incredibly callous.
It really does.
Through our modern 21st century lens, it sounds like he is an elite marathon runner blowing past a group of exhausted, crawling walkers, completely indifferent to their struggle.
Right.
It's like seeing a stranded motorist with a flat tire on the side of the highway in the pouring rain, and you purposefully accelerate, change into the fast lane, and pass by them just to show off your working car.
That's how it reads to us today, yeah.
Why would he plan to just walk past them in the middle of a hurricane?
If we read it with that modern, colloquial understanding of passing by, Jesus sounds arrogant and dismissive. But our sources make it abundantly clear that this is a catastrophic misreading of the ancient text.
Okay.
Mark is not describing indifference. He is describing a profound theological revelation.
So how are we actually supposed to read it?
To unlock the meaning of passing by, we have to read it through the lens of the Septuagint.
The Greek translation of the Old Testament.
Exactly. The disciples and Mark's original readers were steeped in this language. In the Septuagint, that specific phrasing is used as a highly specialized technical term for a divine epiphany.
Oh, interesting.
It is the language of a theophany.
A theophany meaning a visible, physical manifestation of God to human beings.
Precisely. Let's look at the two most famous examples in the Old Testament, because Mark is directly mirroring them here.
Okay, let's hear them.
Think back to the book of Exodus, chapter 33. Moses is agonizing over his leadership of the Israelites, and he begs God, Please show me your glory.
Right, a famous scene.
And how does Yahweh respond? He places Moses in the cleft of the rock and says, I will make all my goodness pass before you.
Oh, wow. God passing by Moses wasn't God ignoring Moses.
Not at all.
It was the ultimate display of intimacy and divine self-revelation.
Exactly. And we see the exact same language again in 1 Kings 19.
Oh, with Elijah, right.
Yes. The prophet Elijah is fleeing for his life. He's exhausted. He's hiding in a cave on Mount Horeb. God tells him to go stand on the mountain before the Lord.
And what does the text say?
It explicitly says, and behold, the Lord passed by, followed by the wind, the earthquake, the fire, and the low whisper.
So when Mark writes that Jesus meant to pass by them on the water, he isn't saying Jesus was giving them the cold shoulder.
Definitely not.
He's saying that Jesus was staging a formal, majestic display of his uncreated glory. He is putting himself in the exact same position as Yahweh in the Old Testament. It is the ultimate microphone drop of divine identity.
And it goes even deeper than just the phrase passing by. We have to look at the act of walking on the sea itself.
There's more Old Testament connection there.
Oh, absolutely. In the Old Testament framework, absolute sovereign dominion over the turbulent sea is an incommunicable prerogative belonging exclusively to Yahweh.
Meaning only God can do it.
Right. The sea represented primordial chaos, the abyss, the forces of destruction that no human could ever tame.
The sea was basically the ancient world's ultimate boogeyman. It was the realm of sea monsters and death.
Exactly. And yet Job chapter 9 verse 8 declares that God alone trampled the waves of the sea.
God alone.
Psalm 77 says to God, your way was through the sea, your path through the great waters, yet your footprints were unseen. God is the only one who treads on the chaos.
Man. So put yourself in the sandals of a first-century Jewish fisherman.
Right. Imagine it.
You know your Old Testament. You know that only Yahweh tramples the waves. You know that Yahweh reveals his glory by passing by his prophets.
Yes.
Now you look out into the storm and you see a figure trampling the chaotic waves, intending to pass by you in a display of glory. There is only one possible theological conclusion to draw from those data points.
The conclusion is undeniable. This man is the creator God in human flesh.
It's unavoidable.
Jesus is deliberately assuming the attributes, the titles, and the actions that are reserved exclusively for the God of the universe.
But this is where the narrative takes a psychological turn that is just fascinating and honestly a little bit pathetic on the human side.
It really is.
Because if the creator has just announced his presence in such a magnificent, biblically recognizable way, you would expect the disciples to instantly fall down in the boat in worship.
Right, you would expect overwhelming relief.
Yeah. The rescue has arrived, the cavalry is here, the God who parted the Red Sea is walking toward them.
But that is not what happens at all. Instead of worship, instead of recognition, they succumb to absolute irrational terror.
Honor panic.
The text says they see him, and instead of recognizing Yahweh, they think they're looking at a ghost.
A phantom, an apparition.
Yes, the Greek word is phantasma, and the term implies an apparition rooted deeply in superstitious, pagan maritime folklore.
Like a sea spirit or something.
Exactly. Ancient sailors believed that seeing spirits on the water during a storm was an omen of imminent death. It meant the abyss was coming to claim them.
It's amazing how exhaustion and fear completely hijack the brain's ability to process reality.
It shuts down all rational thought.
Their physical retinas are registering a real solid figure walking on the water, but their judgment, which is clouded by 12 hours of trauma and adrenaline, supplies a completely false, demonic explanation.
They look at the God of the universe and mistake him for a monster.
That's just wild.
Mark uses language that implies they were shaken violently, thrown into utter shrieking confusion. They're screaming in terror.
And notice how Jesus responds to this sheer panic. I mean, he doesn't stand on the waves and berate them for their lack of theological acumen.
No, he doesn't mock their superstition.
He responds instantly to their terror with 3 distinct rapid-fire commands.
Tharsaite, ege me phobiste.
Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid.
Those 3 phrases are the anchor of the whole narrative.
Let's dig into the center point of that response, because the English translation really neuters the power of what he actually said.
It really does a disservice to the text.
In English, it is I, just sounds like a casual identification, like, hey guys, it's just me, Jesus, your rabbi. Put the oars down, don't freak out.
It sounds colloquial in English, but the original language carries the weight of eternity. The phrase Jesus uses is ego eimi.
Ego eimi.
Now, while that can be a simple self-identification in common speech, in this specific miraculous context, surrounded by Old Testament imagery of walking on the sea and passing by. It is so much more.
It's the divine name.
Exactly. Ego eimi is the exact Greek translation used in the Septuagint for the absolute sacred divine name revealed to Moses at the burning bush in Exodus 3.12.
Whom.
Right. It is the exact same phrase used repeatedly in the Greek translation of the prophet Isaiah to denote Yahweh's unique, self-existent, eternal deity.
So Jesus isn't just saying, it's me, Jesus of Nazareth.
No, he is declaring his absolute, uncreated Godhead over the roar of the wind.
He is literally yelling into the hurricane, take courage, I am, stop being afraid.
He is anchoring their courage not in the cessation of the storm, but in the reality of his eternal existence.
That is so powerful.
And to truly appreciate the weight of this, consider the historical context of the original audience who would be reading Mark's gospel.
Okay, set the scene for us.
Mark wasn't just writing this in a vacuum. This gospel was heavily circulated among the Christian communities living in Rome in the mid to late 60s AD.
Right, and that was not a good time or place to be a Christian.
It was a horrific time. This was during the tyrannical, blood-soaked reign of the Roman Emperor Nero.
Just brutal persecution.
These Roman Christians were facing state-sponsored persecution. They were being stripped of their property, thrown to wild beasts in the arena, used as human torches to light Nero's gardens.
They were living in their own terrifying, seemingly endless storm.
And what was the propaganda of the Roman Empire at that time?
The narrative of the empire was that Caesar alone was the sovereign.
Exactly. Caesar claimed the title Dominus et Deus, Lord and God. Caesar claimed to be the one who offered the Pax Romana, the peace of Rome, which was supposedly the ultimate security for the civilized world.
But it was a false peace, maintained entirely by the edge of a sword and the threat of crucifixion.
Precisely. So imagine you are a terrified Christian in Rome, hiding in the catacombs, wondering if you are going to be arrested tomorrow.
Right.
And you read this account in Mark's gospel. Mark is presenting a sharp, subversive, political and theological polemic.
He is telling these persecuted believers, Caesar does not rule the waves.
Exactly. Caesar does not control creation. Caesar is not the true Lord.
Jesus Christ is the true Jaimi, the eternal God who alone commands the chaos, who alone tramples the sea, and who alone grants true peace.
That context just changes everything about how we read this. It shows us how deeply fear distorts our perception of reality.
It really does. When the disciples' hearts weren't anchored in the theological truth of who Jesus was, they looked right at their ultimate deliverer, the great I Am, and they misidentified him as a phantom, as a threat to their lives.
You're hitting on something profound there. Fear causes us to misinterpret our own lives. Anxiety gives false names to divine providence.
Oh, that's a powerful way to say it.
We experience a delay, and we call it abandonment. We face a brutal trial, and we call it destruction.
We look at the very circumstances God is sovereignly using to shape us and test our faith, and we scream because we think it's a ghost coming to kill us.
And we do this because in that moment of panic, our hearts forget the fundamental identity of Christ.
So true. Biblical courage, as demonstrated in this text, isn't about positive thinking, is it?
Not at all.
It's not about manufacturing some kind of emotional bravery from within or hyping yourself up in the mirror. Courage is entirely grounded in who is speaking to you.
Courage is entirely theological, not circumstantial. Notice the structure of Jesus' command here.
Okay, walk us through it.
He commands courage, take heart, and he forbids fear, do not be afraid. And the structural, load-bearing bridge between those two commands is his identity. I am.
That's the anchor.
We are not called to be brave because we think the sea is suddenly going to become harmless. We are called to be brave because the sovereign Lord of the sea is present in the chaos with us.
The gospel supplies a much stronger, more immovable assurance than our constantly changing circumstances ever could.
Exactly.
Okay, so the Creator has announced his presence. He has declared the eternal divine name over the roar of the wind. What happens when he actually bridges that final gap and steps out of the storm and into the wooden boat?
This is where things get really revealing.
Because here we see this shocking, almost disturbing contrast between how the physical elements of nature react to Jesus and how the human mind reacts to him.
It is a devastating contrast that exposes the depths of human brokenness. Verse 51 tells us that the moment Jesus climbs into the boat with them, the wind instantly ceases.
Instantly.
The Greek word ekopassin implies that the wind grew exhausted, it abated, it fell into a state of total rest.
The detail that stands out to me here is the silence. I mean, in Mark chapter 4, when he was asleep in the boat during the first storm, he woke up and had to vocally rebuke the wind.
Right, he had to speak the words, peace, be still, to bring order.
But here, he doesn't say a single word to the weather. He just steps his physical foot over the gunwale into the boat, and the storm just collapses in on itself.
The unthinking physical creation recognizes its maker instantly.
It doesn't even hesitate.
The violent tempest doesn't slowly dissipate over a few hours, like a normal weather system blowing over. It yields instantaneously to the sheer presence of his sovereign will.
It goes from a roaring, category-level hurricane to total, glassy silence in a fraction of a second.
The subjection of the natural world to Christ is absolute and immediate.
The elements submit, but the disciples, their reaction is the exact opposite of calm, peaceful submission.
Completely the opposite.
The text says they are utterly astounded, and our sources dive into the original language here to show just how extreme their reaction was.
Mark uses stacked, intensive language to describe their psychological state. Lian ek perisou existanto.
What does that translate to?
It means they were exceedingly, superabundantly, beyond measure astonished. The root of the word literally means they were driven out of their normal state of mind.
Wow.
They were psychologically blown away, almost to the point of hysteria.
And Mark doesn't present this amazement as a positive thing, does he? Modern Christians often think that being amazed by Jesus is the goal of faith.
We love the idea of being amazed.
Right, but Mark don't say, look at how much they marveled at Jesus' power. He gives what I can only call a devastating clinical diagnosis of their spiritual condition.
He does. In verse 52, Mark gives the causal explanation for their irrational, hysterical shock. He writes, "For they did not understand about the loaves, but their hearts were hardened."
I want to spend some time unpacking that literary connection because it feels like a total non sequitur at first glance. What do loaves of bread have to do with walking on a hurricane?
Scholars often call this a Markan sandwich.
A Markan sandwich?
Yeah, where Mark intentionally splices two events together to explain one another. He deliberately links their failure to comprehend the sea miracle to their failure earlier that exact same day at the feeding of the 5,000.
Okay, so what did they miss at the feeding of the 5,000?
During that miracle, Jesus acted as the Good Shepherd. He provided miraculous manna in a desolate wilderness, deliberately echoing the actions of Yahweh during the Exodus.
Providing manna in the wilderness.
He was showing them, I am the one who sustains life out of nothing.
They should have seen the multiplication of the bread and fish, gathered up the 12 baskets of leftovers, and concluded, this man is the divine provider. He is the new Moses. He is the Lord of physical creation.
Exactly. If they had properly understood the theology of the bread, the walking on water wouldn't have driven them out of their minds with terror.
It would have made sense to them.
They would have expected the creator of matter to also have absolute mastery over the elements of water and wind. They would have seen him on the water and said, of course he can do that. He's the I am.
Their failure to understand the rescue at sea is a direct, unavoidable result of missing the Christological point of the picnic on the grass. And Mark diagnoses the root cause of this blindness. It wasn't an intellectual deficit. It wasn't that they weren't smart enough to do the mathematical calculations of the bread miracle.
No, it was a profound moral and spiritual corruption.
Mark says their hearts were hardened.
The Greek word there is peperchimeno.
Peperchimeno. What's the imagery there?
It refers to the formation of a callus. Think about a petrification process where living tissue turns to stone.
Ooh.
It indicates a settled, abiding state of blind insensitivity. Their core spiritual organ of perception was calcified.
You know, I was trying to think of how to explain this kind of systemic failure, and it reminds me of a smartphone whose operating system is completely frozen or out of date.
Oh, that's interesting.
Imagine you have a phone from like 10 years ago, and you are trying to run today's massive high-powered software on it.
It just can't handle it.
Right. Doesn't matter how much incredible, flawless new data you try to download. You can swipe the most amazing high-res photos across the screen, in this case. You can show the phone the miraculous loaves. You can show it the walking on water.
The input is perfect.
But the hardware itself is petrified. The core processor is fundamentally incapable of processing the data. It will just crash or freeze or spit out an error message like calling the Son of God a ghost.
Yeah.
It cannot process the reality in front of it until a complete hard reset occurs.
That is a highly accurate analogy. The natural, fallen human mind does not possess the native capacity to synthesize and understand divine revelation on its own.
It is a hardware issue, not just a data issue.
Exactly. And this leads us directly to what is perhaps the most uncomfortable, deeply humbling, yet absolutely crucial theological takeaway of this entire narrative.
It's the part of the deep dive that really strips away human pride. Because if seeing a man literally walk on a raging sea and watching him silence a hurricane just by stepping his foot into a wooden boat,
If that level of empirical, undeniable evidence isn't enough to make you truly understand and believe, what in the world ever could be?
this is where the text fiercely confronts some major, deeply ingrained theological errors that are so prevalent today.
It really does. It confronts the underlying human condition of total depravity.
There's depravity.
What Mark is showing us is that spiritual blindness is not simply a lack of evidence. It is a profound, systemic moral hostility and deadness toward God,
The disciples' hysterical astonishment proves a terrifying reality.
which is
That religious excitement, emotional amazement, and even physical proximity to undeniable miracles are not the same thing as saving faith or spiritual perception.
that is a huge point. You can be sitting right there in the boat with Jesus, your clothes dripping wet from the storm, he just silenced, and still have a heart of solid stone.
Yes. Our sources use this passage to strictly rebuke theological frameworks that suggest human beings have this autonomous, neutral, unfallen free will.
Right, the idea that a person can just objectively look at the evidence of God, weigh the pros and cons, and choose to believe on their own power.
Because if anyone in human history had the raw, undeniable evidence, it was the disciples in that boat.
They had it all.
They saw it with their own retinas, they ate the multiplied bread, they felt the wind stop, but they couldn't process it. The evidence didn't cure their blindness, it just exposed their hardness.
Which proves that without a sovereign, divine intervention to change the heart itself.
What theologians call regeneration.
Right, regeneration, where God unilaterally acts to rip out that petrified heart of stone and replace it with a living, beating heart of flesh, as the prophet Ezekiel describes.
Without that illuminating grace of the Holy Spirit, external miracles mean absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all. You can attend the most biblically sound church, witness amazing answers to prayer, have all the religious privilege and education in the world, and still remain spiritually dead, viewing Christ as a terrifying phantom rather than a saving Lord.
In our modern context, we live in an age of total information overload.
Oh, without a doubt.
We are constantly bombarded with the idea that the solution to our doubt is just more data.
If we just acquire more facts.
Right. If we just read one more dense apologetics book, if we just find the perfect, irrefutable historical proof. Or, on the flip side, if we just have some dramatic, emotionally overwhelming religious experience, then our anxieties will be fixed.
Then we will finally have unshakable faith.
But Mark 6 teaches us that our fundamental, deepest need is not for more data. We don't need a bigger, flashier display of divine power.
What we desperately need is a renewed heart.
We need the Spirit of God to perform a miraculous surgery on our internal hardware, to unstop our deaf ears and soften our calloused hearts, so that we can rightly interpret the data we already have through the lens of Christ's divine identity.
So if we take all of this, the storm, the walking on water, the hardened hearts, what does this mean for the listener today?
How does this ancient, terrifying maritime event apply to the daily life of someone trying to follow Christ?
The sources draw out the practical application by focusing on duty and obedience. This passage is a massive call to completely reject the pragmatic solutions and subjective mysticism that infect so much of modern Christianity.
Let's define those terms for clarity. By pragmatism, we're talking about the philosophy that if something works, if it draws a massive crowd, if it makes people feel good, it must be the right way to do church or live the Christian life.
Right. And by mysticism, we're talking about chasing subjective emotional highs or seeking new, extra-biblical revelations to validate your faith.
Exactly. The modern church is heavily tempted by models that try to artificially engineer an emotional response, or by teachings that promise a smooth, easy life if you just have enough faith.
But this narrative strips all of that away.
Yeah.
We must anchor ourselves entirely in the objective, revealed Word of God.
We measure our faithfulness not by how calm our external circumstances are, but by our obedience to Christ in the middle of the storm.
Because, as we saw at the very beginning of this narrative, Christ himself might be the one who sovereignly forced you into the storm in the first place.
Your suffering might be the direct result of your obedience.
Precisely. And in those terrifying moments, when you are rowing in the dark, physically and spiritually exhausted, You don't need a new, pragmatic technique for bailing water.
You don't need a motivational speech.
You need the sovereign presence of the great I Am. You need the one who tramples the waves to reveal his glory to you.
Let's briefly recap the journey we've just taken, because we have covered a massive amount of theological and historical ground today.
We really have.
We started by feeling the violent, freezing reality of the Galilean winds. We looked up and saw the high priest alone on the mountain, watching omnisciently over his exhausted, terrified people in the pitch black.
We witnessed the Old Testament coming vividly to life as Yahweh trampled the chaotic waves and passed by in uncreated glory.
We heard the great I Am speak his eternal identity into the chaos of human terror, subduing the physical creation with nothing more than his mere presence in the boat.
And finally, we were confronted with the stark, deeply humbling reality of the calcified human heart, exposing our absolute need for divine, regenerating grace just to see him clearly.
It is a narrative that completely shatters our small, manageable, comfortable views of who Jesus is.
It leaves us standing in awe.
Not just of his incomprehensible power over the weather, but of his gracious power to save utterly depraved, spiritually blind people like us.
It demands nothing less than that we bow before the transcendent sovereign Christ.
And so we want to leave you with a final, provocative thought to mull over on your own as you go about your day.
The world constantly tells you that true peace is found when you finally gain control over the chaotic waters of your life.
Peace is what happens when you finally get the promotion, when the scary health crisis passes, when the bank account is full, when the relationship is fixed.
Peace is when the storm finally stops.
But Christ does not say, "Take heart, the storm is over." He says, "Take heart, it is I."
So ask yourself,
When you find yourself exhausted, physically and spiritually, rowing against a violent headwind in the fourth watch of the night, are you merely begging for a change in the weather? Or are you looking for a revelation of the Creator?